So we actually have Ian here. I'm going to let him introduce himself actually for this presentation. So let's first welcome him to class.
I'm Ian Caruso. I run marketing for a company called Xome. We're an online real estate company with kind of two core businesses. One of them is we sell what's called distressed or bank-owned inventory at online auction. So think of it as eBay for homes. And the other side of that is a retail space, which is people who are looking to buy and sell homes like you and me. We're not investors. We don't have access to large cash pools. So we're looking for a way to save money on the purchase or save money on the sale. Not entirely dissimilar to Redfin, which is a business model that people are very comfortable and knowledgeable of. So my whole career has been in some area of paid marketing. I've been on the display side, the product side. For about 2.5 years, I ran search operations for Groupon. So I was fairly high profile, high spend, and a phenomenal learning experience. And now I'm doing pretty much the entire marketing process for Xome, from user acquisition to engagement for all of our lines of business. I know this is kind of out of order for you guys too, because this was supposed to happen a couple of weeks ago. I'm bad with scheduling. I get sick. Thank you for accommodating me. And I know this is something you guys have probably already covered, and you guys probably know quite a bit about it. So, feel free to engage this as a discussion, not just me standing in front of you. So the agenda is pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about what I consider to be the basics of paid marketing, which is what are we ultimately trying to accomplish, and why are we trying to do it? The why question is huge, and a lot of people, when they're starting in a marketing career, or even people who've been in the space for a long time, but they're just sort of treading water, they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I see that happen outside of marketing as well. People who've been in the professional space for a while, and they've just plateaued because of an inability to see the influence or the importance of their position or tasks outside of their immediate scope. So I'm going to try to cover that pretty carefully and with some detail. And then we're going to talk about paid marketing channels, stuff that you guys have probably already reviewed. It's going to be search, it's going to be social, display, affiliate. I'm going to talk about sort of video and audio marketing separately. A lot of people lump that in with display marketing. Really, I see it as kind of a marriage of display marketing and social marketing with your targeting capabilities and with how people interact with it. But it's becoming such a big part of our collective lives and such a big part of how people like me actually drive revenue that I think it deserves its own space. And then I just have 2 little slides of what I'm going to call taking it to the next level, where we're going to talk about the idea of marketing incrementality and attribution. So the basics. What are we actually talking about today? Well, talking about paid digital marketing, which I have arbitrarily defined as leveraging online publishers to engage users to attain a business goal. In the beginning part of this deck, you're going to see just a constant theme of attaining business goals. What is the business actually getting out of it? That's the big focus, because that is what we're really talking about, is growing and supporting a working, living business. No matter what stage the business is at, it needs more money, or it needs more users, or it needs more revenue. Revenue, money, anyway. It needs to grow and it needs to be supported, and that is marketing's job. So why do we do it? It's, again, the revenue word. The more people know about your site, the more people come to your business, the more money you will eventually make. And that's not guaranteed. Your funnel always changes based on who you're attracting and how you're engaging and how you're communicating. But the basic is you've got a wider aperture up here where you're collecting people, and a narrower one down here where they're ultimately paying you. And how do we bring more people in, and how do we move them through? How do we bring the right people in? How do we move them through? The other reason why we do paid digital marketing is because it is infinitely trackable, providing you actually have done the plumbing work to make it trackable. It can be very difficult to get engineering teams to move in lockstep, but there are wonderful tools out there to help you with tracking and attribution for all of your marketing efforts. So if set up properly, these systems can, down to the channel, the ad that people saw, even the intent of the user, even at the level of who the user is and what you can know about them, from demographic to behavioral targeting, the cost of acquiring that person, the date on which you acquired them, everything can be collected so you can bucket your users based on who have we attracted and who has ultimately paid us. And you can slice that however you want in thousands of different ways to actually find where the most opportunity you have for your business. So how do we ultimately drive the revenue? I spoke just a minute ago about the wider aperture at the top to the people who actually pay you. There's two parts to digital marketing fundamentally, and that is acquiring users and engaging users. And sometimes you're doing both at the same time. And it depends on what the business goals, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So acquiring a user, informing them of who you are. You know, it's the first time they've seen your ad, it's the first time they've come to the site, you're building awareness, and you're building some kind of rapport with a person. If you're in a lead gen type of business, you might just engage them this one time. One thing that we do is, one thing that we at Xome do is we're always looking for people who are looking to sell their homes. So we have a couple of collection pages where people can come in and find out how much their home is worth, get comp information, get some broader data on the general real estate space in their city, in their town, in their zip code, in their neighborhood. And in order to get that information from us, they have to part with an element of their online anonymity. They have to give us their name, a phone number, and an email address. You know, what do we ultimately do with that? Well, they're never going to come back to that site because that site is designed just to collect that piece of information. But we can use that information to engage them for our other lines of business or even sell the information to a real estate agent, much as the way Zillow would. The other side of it is to engage users. If you look at a product online, that product can follow you for a couple of days. You might see it in ads. Nordstrom's great at this. Zoomies is phenomenal at this. You know, or actually, there's so many different tools out there, they become so cost effective that just about anyone can put a product that you've viewed in the right rail of your email, in Facebook, you know, on any website you visit. So that that user-based re-engagement can be highly valuable to people like me who are looking to engage people to ultimately make money from them. And then you have an idea of building an understanding with the customer or building loyalty with the customer. And that is when you can use follow-up pieces of marketing communication to better inform them of services or communicate, you know, other elements of the business that they might not know of. You might notice this if you buy, let's say you buy a handbag and you receive, you know, additional pieces of marketing through either email, or you might see display ads for that where it's the accompanying clutch or the accompanying wallet. And that is because they know that people who buy this particular handbag ultimately convert on additional items that are accessories to that handbag. So what is the revenue thing? This keeps coming up. All digital marketing efforts need to be grounded in hard business goals and outputs, meaning since this is infinitely trackable, since you can tie a spend to an entity, you can tie that spend to a person if that person converts with you, and you can ultimately tie that person, meaning you can tie that spend, to an event that puts money in your pocket. So no matter what you're doing, you know how much money you have spent for a defined window of time and how much those people have put in your pocket. And you could also know, and this could be informed through a business analyst, this could be informed from the people who run or operate the business, the finance side, or if it's just you marketing, you know, something that you make, it needs to be informed by you, but you look at it, say this is money out, this is money in, what margin do I need to survive? Or what margin do we deem as successful? in order to get that return on investment, you have to understand what the funnel looks like. So earlier I talked about large aperture where we collect people, small group of people who ultimately pay you. A lot of people fall out along the way, but what does the process for each step look like, and where are your fall-off points? So there's rates that go, essentially rate statistics, as in 10% of people who sign up or who come to the site ultimately buy. Well, if that is the case, then what is the step before buying? It's putting an item in a cart. So you find that 30% of the people who put an item in a cart buy, or however you work up the funnel. There's awareness, first search, second search, item in cart. However it's done, understanding what that means for your business or the business you work for is necessary to justify any level of marketing spend. And then there's the question of payback, which is directly related to the funnel. Again, money in, money out. And that could be as simple as, in aggregate, how much have I spent for this week? How much did I make this week? Or how much did I spend this week? And who did I ultimately acquire? And over what amount of time am I willing to take that as revenue attributed to that group of people for this week? And again, cutting this by channel, by demographic, by users, channel being search, social, display, that stuff, is necessary to justify further marketing spend, in my opinion. So it comes down to understanding, or this all ties in to ultimately understanding the business goals. I'm going to use some examples from my past that you guys might be familiar with. In the case of Groupon, what did Groupon want to do? Well, the only metric that we were held to was actual monetary return that day. So we would bring someone to the site with a keyword that said, Aveda spa coupon, or Seattle Thai food or something like that. And we were held to actually being cash positive that day for that entity or a collection of entities. So that would actually be, a hard return on investment in a 24-hour period. But in the case of a Zillow or the marketing page that I outlined earlier, where I'm trying to just get people's information that I then monetize, I'm just trying to bring people into the site and have them raise their hand. And I know, because I know how I monetize those people, I know where they fall out, or I know the rates by which they move through my pipeline. I know that I can spend, say, $5 to acquire an email address. It's going to cost me $1.10 to get someone to the site. It's going to cost me about $5 for someone to convert. So you can figure out what that fallout rate is. And I ultimately am willing to spend north of $1,000 to engage someone to buy or sell a house. So you can then look at the fallout rate from, I spend $5 to acquire somebody, I spend $1,000 to get a listing agreement or get someone to buy through me. So there's a lot of additional marketing efforts, paid, email, SMS messaging, even outbound phone calls, which we do consider an element of marketing, that goes into trying to pull people from that $5 submission to that $1,000 listing agreement, hoping ultimately that I can decrease the cost of my listing agreement or increase the volume at that $1,000. The big point I'm trying to get across is that doing any marketing in a vacuum isn't going to work for you, for your employer, for any business that you're engaged with. You have to understand what you're putting in and what you're pulling out, and the best way to do that and secure your position or win the confidence of the people that you're working with is to be proactive in the work you're doing. If you're in an environment where this is infinitely trackable, if you're in an environment where all of the information you need to make the right decision is at your fingertips, then it's on you to make that right decision before anyone questions whether or not you're making the wrong decision. And that's going to be the only point of career advice for the entire thing. But know your goals, know your targets, know your rates, know what it means when you acquire know what it means when someone comes to your site, and for every person who comes to your site, know the likelihood of them to purchase, and know the likelihood of how much you're going to make. Or if purchase isn't your goal, how much collecting that email address is worth. I'm going to use an example of David's Bridal. I used to work with them on the product side. The goal, like gold for them, wasn't selling a dress, believe it or not. They didn't really care about that, even though their margins were huge. Bridesmaid dress cost them $15, $25. They sell it for $140. So you'd think, I really want to sell that dress. Not at all. What do they want? They want a bride's name, email address, phone number, and wedding date. That is the most important thing they can get, because that bride will get between 20 and 40 pieces of email communication or other communication every single month. And it'll be reminders that it's time for you to do your save the dates. And they have an affiliate partner for, well, actually they have a product for that. It's not called David's Bridal, or at the time it wasn't, it's something else. You know, it's now time for you to send out your invitations. It's time for you to select bridesmaids' gifts. It's time for your husband-to-be to select groomsmen gifts, because he's going to forget about that, and he's going to have to do that the last second, and they're going to suck. For example, that might have happened. But that constant reminder, for them, it wasn't about immediate ROI. It was knowing that collecting this piece of information is ultimately going to put a whole lot more money in their pockets than selling one dress or one pair of shoes to one person on one day. Okay, we're going to get into channels. First, we're going to hammer on some definitions. Digital marketing is commonly purchased through the following methods: CPC, or cost per click; a CPM, or a CPI, which is cost per 1,000 impressions, meaning in the display space, if you see, you know, an actionable billboard or a pre-rolled video, that might be charged for every 1,000 times it is sold, or it is shown. A cost per action, or CPA; a cost per viewing, CPV, and that would be mostly locked into the video or audio advertising. And you can negotiate what a viewing is. Is a viewing the entire ad? Is a viewing 5 seconds of the ad before it can be skipped? You can set up your videos to be unskippable if you so choose. So there's a lot of options there. And then cost per engagement. That's one that Facebook kind of started, well, many years ago at this point. But when somebody engages with an ad, there can be a charge there. But an example of that is like a Facebook lead gen ad, where you never leave Facebook, but you volunteer your information to the marketing company that's trying to do this. And I'll show you an example of that and talk through why it works and why it doesn't. Money is paid to the owner or the broker of the ad space for the advertising, meaning that the person facilitating your purchase of that ad space is nowadays often not the person who owns the ad space. And we'll talk about exchanges a little bit. Inventory is nearly always awarded via auction. And it's not always a very cut and dried auction. For example, in Google is looking at their own monetization of their queries, because Google makes money on people clicking on ads that they show. So we are all the people we all cause Google to make money, but we don't ultimately pay Google. Well, I pay Google, but you guys are the reason Google makes money. And I am bidding on entities saying, I'm willing to pay this much per click. But Google's looking at it as, how much money do I make every time I show an ad? Meaning, they're actually doing a fairly complex calculation saying, I'm bidding on the term, Chicago pizza restaurant. There's 40 other people bidding on the term Chicago pizza restaurant. This guy drives a tremendous amount of clicks when he's shown. Ian doesn't drive too many, so we have to adjust what they're going to spend to get that placement.
Can you control it to down to the human? They've already seen this one about this clutch, I want to show them this wallet now or something?
So Yes, you can. It depends on who you're using. The short answer, no. It's not complicated. The short answer is absolutely. And there are people who've built really good systems to put that information in front of you. And you can actually feed data into their systems that says, for someone who buys this, and you would be cookied as someone who has bought that handbag. For someone who buys this handbag, then show them this. Or someone who views this handbag, re-show them the handbag, and re-show them these other items that people who also buy the handbag buy. You see this in your Amazon feed all the time, so just imagine that whatever, Amazon has more data on us than just about anyone, but imagine that that same capability exists all the way across the internet. And if the company that you're shopping from has the systems in place and the appropriate partnerships, then they can do exactly what Amazon does in telling you customers who bought this also bought that, but just do it implicitly anywhere you go. I have a really interesting partnership with a company called Evergage who does exactly this on my website. And they also do it in my emails. So a very difficult thing for me to do was to come up with an algorithm that created property suggestions for my buyers and dynamically send that in an email every week. But because of the amount of computing power that went into it, it wasn't supported by the email tool I used. So I essentially had a business analyst matching people with properties every week and then uploading files saying, execute on this. Dustin Cole needs to receive these 5 properties, for example. What this company has done is I send them my property catalog, I send them my user data, like purchase history or bidding history, because I'm running an auction marketplace here, of what everyone does, and they, through a rules-based system that I created, match people to individual properties that we think they're going to buy. And that just comes out in a collapsible widget in the email. And if there's no properties, you don't see the widget. And we can do the same thing on our website, and we can leverage this tool to do it all the way across the internet because they have publishing relationships with a handful of people who work in the display space. So,
That is crazy.
now she said creepy.
It is both things.
It's amazing.
Well,
What's that company?
that company's called Evergage.
Everything?
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies that are like that, and they all came out of a way to help retailers connect, I'm not going to say a captive audience, but loyal buyers or loyal customers with products that they're interested in, which ultimately as a consumer, it doesn't help me keep more money in my pocket, but it definitely keeps me informed of a product that I would want that I might not have known existed.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
on number 1, if someone was looking to just get started with paid advertising, how do you think about which option to choose in terms of like how you'd like to pay? Like CPC versus CPA.
Cool. So I would actually look at the channels afforded to that marketer more than the actual ways that you would transact for that piece of marketing. And we're going to get into that when we start talking about the individual paid marketing channels, because there are more direct ways to engage people, i.e. lower in that purchase funnel, that are more surefire things. So if you're starting up a business, or if it's your own business, and you know what sets your product apart, or you know what makes your product resonate with your buyers, if you can focus on groups of people exactly like your existing buyer pool, then engaging them is going to be the most cost-effective way if you're just starting out. So for someone who's getting their feet wet, starting their own business, or taking over online marketing from or taking it on at a company where it's never existed, I'd strongly recommend starting on search and social, which is going to be mostly a CPC relationship. To get into a cost per action or a cost per acquisition. That's kind of what I mean by action here is, acquiring a user or selling a product to a user. In order to negotiate for that kind of stuff, you have to have a fairly large history of purchase activity, and usually the publisher has to have confidence that your purchase activity will continue at an expected rate. So that's usually something that mature businesses can get into. It becomes more difficult for people getting off the ground. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Since I almost blew through 2 questions, anything else? Okay, let's move into the channels then. As I said earlier, the commonly used channels and the ones that we're going to focus on today, paid search is very near and dear to my heart and very important to just about every online business out there. Social, which there's a lot of companies that swear by social because they're able to really home in on who that user is. Affiliate marketing, which can be a terrible rat hole in conversation, but we'll try to avoid that. Display marketing, those big billboards that you see when you go to ESPN.com, Forbes, or whatever sites you go to. And then audio and video marketing, which, as I said, are commonly seen as components of display and social, but I've given them their own space for some reason. So, paid search. This probably looks really familiar to just about everybody. Maybe you're not looking for a Google Pixel for sale, but at least you're familiar with what a Google ad looks like, or what a PLA or product listing ad looks like. Just for giggles, I put this one in here because here I am looking for golf shoes for men, and I see men's shoes by Hermes, which seems like kind of a disconnect. But what is even funnier is the page is just completely broken. So kind of a search 101 here. If you're going to be paying for traffic, no matter how much you're paying for the traffic, make sure that it actually lands somebody on a page where they can do something. Because here, Hermes is, failed miserably. But everyone knows what this looks like. Everyone knows or I'm assuming that you guys all have seen this, and we can all piece together how it works. Google is saying, okay, for this query, this is probably the place where we're going to make the most money. So we're going to show this ad, and we're going to show it first. For this query, we know that this person is looking for a product, so we're going to list products here in a visible space where that person can click through, or they can go over to our shopping tab and engage more products in a list form where they can filter. All of that is paid marketing. Every time somebody clicks on anything that is here, or here, or here, Google is collecting money from the advertiser. Yes?
How does Google know this is what I'm going to make the most money?
Because they've got a lot of really smart people doing that math.
So what criteria do they use to evaluate how much money they make? So how do they do the ranking?
That's a great question.
Do those companies bid, like say, I will pay you, say, $1 for each click or something?
Yes. So Google is looking at RPM, revenue per 1,000 impressions. I apologize for my chicken scratch. And if anyone like me hates the sound of chalk, I apologize for that too. So this is an impression. Each one of these is an impression. So Google looks at, Google's value is their real estate. They do have a lot of searches every day. They have a lot of search queries. This is a search query. They have a lot of those executed every day, and you may think that it's infinite, but it's actually not. And they can anticipate about how many queries we're going to get every day. And from there, they can extrapolate, okay, we're probably going to make this much money on our advertising efforts each and every day. So knowing that this space is finite, you want to make sure you maximize it. So every time somebody puts this in, Google knows how many people are trying to buy something related to this query. So in the case of a keyword, do you guys cover match types?
No.
Broad phrasing, okay. So in the case of a search keyword, there is a broad match, a phrase match, and an exact match. So if somebody has put in Google Pixel for sale, like if they're bidding on that keyword, then Google can say with pretty good confidence that this is probably a qualified result for this search query. So perhaps we'll show it. But this person's only bidding, say, 5 cents on that click. And I've got someone who's willing to bid $3 on the word pixel, which is in this query. So Google can say, okay, $3 versus 5 cents, but which one is more likely to drive that click? Because Google makes money on the click, not on the impression. I can keep going, but I want to make sure I haven't totally lost you.
You can go on.
Okay, I think I failed on that one. Trying to find another way to put it.
Well, so are you allowed, as the advertiser, is there a way to then figure out those keywords, search keywords that you just said, having like broad match, phrase match? Is that something that's on Google's side? And as the advertiser, you're allowed to, like, you can put in a ton of different
Yeah.
phrases or
Absolutely.
keywords, or how?
The short answer is yes. You can bid on any variety of terms you want, and maybe starting very high with this is where we need to be. So let's say that I am selling black fry boots. So black fry boots, these brackets would be an exact match keyword. And I could say, okay, I'm going to bid on those. Now, I could also bid on black boots. Because I know that people who are searching for black boots might also be looking for black fry boots. I could also bid on black women's boots, knowing that there is a potential for someone who is searching for black women's boots to buy the boots that I have. So the keywords that you can bid on are virtually limitless. There's, I want to say, a 10,000 entity cap in any Google AdWords account. Sorry, 10 million entity cap in any Google AdWords account. So you can create millions upon millions of ways to attract people to your site, or millions upon millions of things to bid on.
Okay, and then you just pay to bid on all
Yeah.
of those things, and then
You can assign a
dollar
bid.
amount that then you'll get charged if people click on it.
Yeah, exactly. And you can say, okay, for black fry boots, exactly this. I'm willing to bid $8 because I have all of these in every size, and I have the best price, and I have the best shipping. So I can say with confidence that anyone who's searching for this is going to buy them from me. But black boots, that might only be worth, I don't know, $1.20 to you, maybe even less. Because you don't know if someone is looking for rain boots. You don't know if someone's looking for cowboy boots. You don't know what they're looking for, but you can say, this has an element of intent that I can service. So, and that just kind of goes into, that kind of factors into basic arithmetic, where you can say, okay, black boots, 5% of people who come to my site having searched for black boots will ultimately buy something. 75% of people, and these are arbitrary numbers that I'm pulling out of thin air, so if the math that I put out earlier doesn't add up, I apologize. But 75% of people who search for this are ultimately going to engage. So,
Yeah.
that makes sense?
Well, yeah, and then
Okay.
it's interesting because if you were just a company,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like if you type in Office Max, well, the ad comes up first and then they're on the website.
Yes.
And so you would think that they probably wouldn't pay much for an exact match for Office Max, right?
They pay very little for it.
I would think so, but they
Yeah.
want to come up first, but.
Absolutely. Because if you're not defending that top real estate space,
Yeah.
then someone else like Staples can take it. So in the
People spend on Office Max and be willing to pay more to show up.
Okay, so this is a really, thank you for this. You've triggered something in my mind that might help me better tackle your question, because frankly, I failed. So,
Because I was also going to ask, like, how do I make my company search result rank higher?
yeah. So,
Make more
okay.
money.
Now I think we're actually moving in a productive direction, and you have my sincere apologies for taking so long to grasp this. So would Staples bid on Office Max? If they can serve the same customer, absolutely. It's going to cost them more to play in it, though. And I'll use the case of Groupon because I can actually quote this with some confidence. Groupon and Living Social, two companies that basically did the same thing, but they have different user bases, different loyalties, that kind of stuff. I could buy a click for the word Groupon for 2 cents. And it didn't matter what I put the bid in at, I paid 2 cents for a click. And that meant that I paid 4 cents for an impression, because 50% of the people who saw the ad clicked on it. I had to bid $2.50 to $3 on the term Living Social, because I was a much lower likelihood of click. So Google was looking at me with the word Groupon saying, every time we show that, we make a penny. That's a slam dunk. We're going to show that every time and only that. But in the case of Living Social, if we show Groupon, someone clicks on that 5% of the time. So we're going to make Groupon pay a whole lot of money to get that click if Living Social is also bidding on it. Because Living Social gets a 50% click rate on their word. So in your Office Max Staples question, or your Office Max question that I inserted Staples into, Office Max is going to be paying a whole lot less for that click and getting a whole lot more of that real estate, because Google is 100% certain that they're going to make money if they show that ad.
Yeah, and because if people are Googling Office Max,
Yeah.
they're looking for Office Max.
Yes. But if Staples shows up first, there might be that person who's just like, oh, okay,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that store.
yeah. That's at the bottom of the hill for me, and they'll fix my PC while I'm in there. Yeah, I'll just click on that one. There could be any reason why Staples could steal that click, and it could even be some totally absent-minded person, because Google cares about what you put in here, but they don't always catch you. And lawyers care about what you put in there, but they also don't necessarily catch you or have the power to stop you. So
Is it smart though? I'm sorry that I'm asking.
no, this is fine.
This now just turned into a dialogue. I might as well just be sitting down if you ask these questions. Is it smart for you to, like, if you have a competitor that has this much of the, market space, let's say, and you're the little guy, would it make sense to try and get your company to come up every time people Google this, not because they're going to click on it, but because then they're going to associate you with the bigger company?
So to get those impressions, again, like this is an impression.
Yeah.
To get those impressions, you're going to have to be bidding a lot for those clicks.
Right.
And if you don't drive any clicks, they're going to stop showing you because they don't make any money. Erased it. Revenue per 1,000 impressions. They don't make any money if nobody clicks you.
Right, so if you're gonna associate yourself with a brand, you just also need
You need to be,
people click.
well, and you need to be bidding a lot of money,
Yeah.
which it might be an amount of money that doesn't pencil out in aggregate, but maybe it's worthwhile if you're close enough in the services you offer,
Right.
or if you offer better services and all you need is to attract their customers.
Yeah.
So, if you're challenging an entrenched, established incumbent, that can be an expensive way to attack them, but it's not necessarily a bad idea. That needs to tie back to, the attribution and payback stuff I talked about earlier, which is this actually penciling out for me? Is acquiring these customers in the long run better for me? Or should I try to attract people who might not know about either company? And here's where you get into doing keyword research. And there's companies that let you do this as well. Two of them that I've used are SpyFu and SEMrush. So these companies actually allow you to put in URLs of anybody. And you can see what keywords they're buying and what organic queries they're surfacing for. Organic search results are these guys. So, and Google's not actually the best example of this, but if I'm looking for black fry boots, then there's going to be a whole bunch of different companies that show up in the organic listings, and probably 5 or 6 ads that are at the top. So these companies would let me say, okay, who sells black fry boots? Well, the Fry company does. Zappos probably does. So I can go put those URLs into these tools, and it will output what they're bidding on. And then you can just remove their name. So if you sell shoes and you want to compete with Zappos, you can plug Zappos into one of these things, export what they have found to be their keyword portfolio. And what they have is they just have big listening tools that watch people search anonymously, and they aggregate the data and collect it. And take every instance of Zappos and say, that's probably going to be too expensive, and it's not going to pencil out. So throw those out, and let's look at the rest of the keywords they use, because I can compete on that. And that's typically called longer tail or long tail, because you're chaining together multiple words that aren't explicitly associated with a brand. Or if it is associated with a brand, it's not associated with the retailer of that brand. That might be a better way to put it.
So you're not bidding on the keywords that they're using, you're bidding on.
You could bid on the exact keywords that they're using, and it's probably a good idea, but I would remove the keywords that mention their name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
So the whole thing about search is trying to capture the intent of a user. And it's very low funnel in the case of this, or in the case of all of these, because these are actual transactional terms. Google Pixel for sale. That's me saying pretty clearly I'm looking to buy a Pixel. Or golf shoes for men. I need golf shoes. I'm probably going to buy something. And this is where your company could compete in those exact terms. Because if you're selling Google phones, well, you don't want to compete with just Google in that, but you can compete with anyone else selling them. For a product like golf shoes, no one actually owns the golf shoe space. It's not like I'm saying golf shoes from PGA Superstore or PGA Superstore golf shoes. You probably wouldn't want to bid on that, but just bidding on golf shoes isn't going to necessarily hurt you if you can compete from a business perspective. And that comes down to how easy is it to order on your site? What, in the case of physical goods, what's your return policy? What's your shipping policy? Do you have free shipping? Let's look at all of the reasons why you buy from one online retailer and not others.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Cool. Was there another question? I thought I saw another one. Yes.
Yeah, so another question about just getting started. So if you had a finite amount of budget, say that you got $500 approved to
Yes.
test on paid
That
search,
is not a whole lot of money.
right?
Yeah.
So say it's something like that. We'll say $1,000.
Oh,
Would
okay.
you think about narrowing down a couple of specific keywords to test on, or would you broaden the breadth of keywords and do test against those keywords to just do some initial validation?
Yeah, it depends. And I can most easily speak about my own experience.
Yeah.
And one of the sites that we launched a couple of months ago is called forsalebyowner.com. And it's not FOR sale by owner, it's the number 4 salebyowner.com. Now, FOR salebyowner.com is owned by a company called Trunk. That's Tribune Publishing, Chicago Tribune. They own the LA Times. They're a massive online and print media company. I'm not going to compete with them, even on a generic keyword like for sale by owner. It's going to be crazy expensive, and I'm going to lose the clicks every time. Also, they've been in business for so long, more than a decade. Google has a tremendous amount of confidence in how frequently people are going to be clicking on this ad. So we elected to do what I call a wide and flat approach and play in that long tail and talk about exactly what we're offering, not our product name or not necessarily the type of buyer we're trying to attract. But our products are, we help people sell their homes and pay 0% sales commission. How do we do that? We list it on our auction platform and assign what's called a buyer's premium, which means the buyer pays the commissions and the fees to transact on the house. But sellers really like that idea of not having to shell out any money for it. Also, the buyer's premium is less money than that standard 6% commission, so that's also pretty appealing. Even if they take less money on the house, it works out on the other side of the equation, they pocket more. So we started exploring keywords along the lines of sell my house, pay no commission, discount agents, or real estate agent keywords can be really expensive, but if you start incorporating words like discount agent or free real estate agent advice, like all of these different permutations you can put together of these words, you can create a lot of words, not spend a lot of money, and really connect with potential customers who are in the most likely space to buy from you. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've already covered most of this, but figured I'd talk about it anyway. The fundamental elements of paid search are your keywords, your ad copy, and your targeting. So a keyword could be anything that you want to bid on and any collection of that and any way you want to break that up. So I know I talked about an exact match keyword. An exact match keyword is, this is all somebody can type into that box. And I want to match to only this. A phrase match being and this is how they're delineated, by the way, in Google. So if you use these brackets around a keyword, you're saying exactly this, nothing more, nothing less. If you're using these quotes, you're saying this has to be in the phrase. So black boots in quotes, called a phrase match. It could be fry black boots, engineering black boots, but it can't be black engineering boots. That would be either a broad match, which you would just write as this, which means either of these words can show up anywhere in the query, in any way. And this can get kind of slippery and kind of dangerous. So back to your question of if I had a finite budget, where would I spend it? I'd spend it here and here. Because pluralizations can run away from you pretty hard. Bing is notorious for taking what they deduce as user intent and charging you for, and showing your ads for an implied intent. So your keyword might be black boots, but someone a couple of searches ago searched for, hunter galoshes, and now they're looking for black sandals, and Bing's like, show them the black boots. That makes sense. And then if you drive a click and it doesn't convert, they kind of go, meh. There's no recourse. So you can actually get into some hot water if you're doing just an open, broad match. One of the ways that you can avoid that, and especially avoid pluralization cases, or if they're taking the word boots and saying, black galoshes are the same thing. So I'm going to match black boots to black galoshes because that's okay. It's what this person actually wants to advertise for anyway. If you want to avoid that, you can do something called a broad match modified, which is putting a plus sign in front of it, and do plus black plus boots, which is only this and this, and only the way these are written right now can show up in the query. So it could still be black engineering boots. You'd show up for that. But you're definitely not going to show up for black galoshes as you might in this case. Cool? Good. Yes?
I'm sorry, you said the one in brackets is
Exact match.
And the other, the parentheses is?
The quotes is called a phrase match, which means this phrase, as it is written right here in the keyword, must be in the query. This is total free-for-all, and if you have a finite budget, I would be very cautious. And this exactly like this and this exactly like this need to show up. And there's virtually no limit to how many, they're called tokens, but how many words you can stretch into these things. But your likelihood of displaying goes down precipitously the more you put in. And Google has changed that algorithm multiple times. So one place where companies used to make a lot of money is bidding on addresses and phone numbers because it was considered to be super long tail. Nobody searches for these things, but when they do, I'm going to get that search because I can monetize that. And Google, I want to say about 3 years ago at this point, almost took those off the map completely, where it's very hard to get a paid match to those things because they didn't find them. Google probably thought about it and said, this isn't in the interest of our users, or this doesn't provide our users value, or we find that we make more money doing less analytical heavy lifting. If somebody searches for an address, we just show them a result for that zip code, or we just show them a result for that neighborhood. So if you get 5, 6 words in here, you might not be showing up at all. But 4, you're going to start getting some traffic. And these are generalizations, but I've seen the longer it gets, you could just be spinning your wheels, creating permutations. Yes?
So I was going to say the black boots example, but there are 3 black boots examples.
Which one?
In quotes.
Okay, phrase match.
Yes. So can other word, like if someone searches in that situation, is it just black boots or boots black that show up?
Nope, that would be this one.
That's that one.
This is, it needs to look exactly like this in the query. So you can say, this could show up for, oh my God, did you see the black boots that, I don't know, Jennifer Lawrence wore on this date at whatever, you get my point.
And then the other one, the exact match, is just black boots.
Black boots. Yes, only that.
Only that, black boots.
Yeah, brackets, you're locked down to just that.
Right. Okay, and then I got it. And then the plus sign one is if it was like, yeah, those, the black swan that had boots on, then you could show up.
Sure.
I don't know where that came from.
Sounds good.
You're a very creative person. Yeah, no, but you're right. You could say like children's book, Black Swan with boots on. There you go.
Yeah, okay.
it could show up. When you might not want to, because you probably don't want to show it for a children's book if you're selling black fry boots. But who knows? A lot
What is the
of
last one
people buy
called?
it.
The plus black?
Plus black. This is called broad match modified. And I'm sorry, I wrote it right behind the podium. But I find that that's really useful in expanding a keyword portfolio with some degree of confidence. I don't want to take as much risk as this would provide, especially if I add a lot of words to my tokens and create a lot of keywords. See it as a mitigating risk and refining the audience a little bit more than this.
So that would be cheaper probably than black boots in quotes, if you were paying for it?
So that it depends. It depends. Sometimes, I mean, we'll do it in extremes. Sometimes an exact match is the cheapest way to go, but if it is an extremely expensive keyword, an exact match might be the most expensive way to go. What exact match and phrase match afford you is the opportunity to show for fewer queries. And the example that a lot of people like to use, it's nowhere near this price now, is mesothelioma. Mesothelioma-related keywords used to actually transact for hundreds of dollars a click, if not thousands. Because if you got one, you had the potential to maybe set up an entire class action suit on behalf of, I don't know, an HVAC union or something. But they were worth a lot of money. So if you wanted to be guaranteed to pay a lot for that, like mesothelioma lawyer, as an exact match, it was probably going to be more expensive than, legal advice for mesothelioma victims in broad match modified or even broad match. But you still might have had a fighting chance here. On the flip side, I guess what I'm trying to say is it all depends on competition and it all depends on what other people are doing, which I know is a pretty awful answer as far as guidance goes, but that's the case. So, yes.
Is there a rule of thumb as far as if you're doing the click per
Cost per click?
cost per click?
Yes.
Of what the ratio of ads to show up is versus the amount of how many people are clicking on it?
So an impression to click ratio?
Correct.
All over the map, really. And that is a combination of the keyword that you have, the ad that you're communicating, and how many other ads are being shown at any given time. So for the example that I have here, and this might not be the best example for it now that I think about it, there's only one ad. But there can be 5 or 6 ads, which can make it a lot more difficult to actually get that click. And the further you are down in ad position, the less likely you are to get that click. And also, if you have a keyword out there and your ad copy doesn't match it, then you're shooting yourself in the foot when you do win that impression. Because if the keyword that you're matching to is black boots and your ad copy reads, discount shoe warehouse or something like that, and doesn't mention black boots, no one's going to actually click on it. So it was a squandered opportunity. So there has to be a relationship between user intent, like expressed user intent, the search query, the keyword and the bid, which is how you got in front of them and how you secured that impression, and then what your ad actually says. So in the case of Groupon, or even Office Max or Staples or whatever company it is, if it's their own branded term and they own that term, that's the only thing someone has searched for, your impression to click ratio is going to be really high. 50, 60, 70%. Maybe even touching 100%, because you're paying for that space to defend it against your competition. But in the case of Office Max, if Staples is trying to get into that space, their impression to click ratio is going to be a lot lower. because they're not Office Max. They're just paying a whole lot of money to be up there. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So the primary publishers for this, no surprise here, Google and Bing. There are other smaller search engines. There's search engines like Ask.com, which essentially buy ads like this to ultimately land you on an Ask page that just has more ads. So few people go to anything but Google and Bing at this point. And those would be the two that I would start to focus on. To go into your question a little bit more, if I had a finite budget to spend and I wanted to play in, more tail keywords or, not necessarily brand identified or brand intent keywords, Bing is not always a bad place to start. It can be a really good source for inexpensive traffic because it receives so much less attention than Google does for every marketer out there. And I have commonly seen that where we push advertising into Bing that we've tested in Google, and all of a sudden I'm paying 50% of what I did on Google for the traffic. Because I find out that half of my competition isn't even on Bing. And if they are on Bing, they're committing 5% of their time to what could be 25% of the market. And how often people use Bing versus Google depends greatly on vertical, believe it or not. If you're a B2B company, you have a much higher likelihood of getting people on Bing because people will use the default search engine on the computer that they're given and the default browser on the computer that they're given. So, if you're doing B2B sales, Bing might actually be where you make 50% of your money, if not more. But it's very underutilized, and it's another good opportunity to get cost-effective traffic. And then your audience, essentially, that top of your funnel, who you can bring in, is defined by your keywords and your targeting. Targeting meaning, time of day you can service. If a call center is integral for you pulling a lead through or for you engaging somebody, then you probably only want to be advertising aggressively while your call center is open. And you can adjust that by time of day. You can say, okay, well, people who sign up and we don't contact them in the first 5 minutes are worth 10% of the people who we do contact in the first 5 minutes. So I'm going to knock my bid down 90% when I'm closed. Just acknowledging I'm not going to get a whole lot of traffic, but if I do get traffic, I'm paying what it's worth. And geography, you can target this by device. You can say, okay, well, we're a mobile-first experience. Our mobile site is awesome. It converts wonderfully. We haven't put any time into desktop because 70% of our users are on mobile. So we're just going to pound that desktop bid down to the floor because nobody's going to interact with us on that. And we don't want them to. We want to focus on the mobile aspect of our business. Any more questions on paid search?
Is B2C then usually Google?
It depends, but Google is the vast majority of the searches in the space. I'm just focusing on B2B marketing because you're engaging people while they're at work. And there's a whole lot more Macs in the workplace now, but they still don't take up 50%. And right now, technically, I'm with a financial company. Our parent company is a mortgage servicer. So when we're engaging other people in the financial space, it's virtually all PCs. And you get into engaging some of the larger banks, and people aren't allowed to put apps on their computers. So they're locked into Internet Explorer, and they just use the top search bar. So Bing is really common for people in my space because they actually have to go through the step to get to Google. Sorry, my space. No, I have no knowledge of marketing on that platform. Yeah, I wasn't even in the professional space when that was a thing. Okay. Yeah, did that answer the question? Sorry for the MySpace reference. That was. And pertinent. We're going into social now, not MySpace. Yeah, this is so these are just two Facebook ads that that I leverage right now. And the reason why I use these as examples is one is called a carousel and the other one's called a lead gen ad. So this is the case of the carousel, where that arrow actually lets you toggle through and look at different pictures of this particular house. Other ways that I leverage this is if I have, say, 10 houses for sale in Washington this week, then for people who live in Washington, I'll show them an ad that has all 10 houses stacked in a carousel. So people could toggle through them, and it will change the address. In the case of my ads, it will change the address, and this Learn More button will link to the individual property. So if I'm saying I have 10 properties for sale in Washington this week, the auction starts on Saturday, people can toggle through it and say, like, no, I don't want to live in Pullman, not interested in houses in Wilbur. Oh, well, this one's in Tukwila. Okay, I'll click through to that one. So it lets me service a broader geographic or a broader demographic user base with one ad. And it also lets me engage people with more variety. We've seen that people are a lot more likely to engage with an ad on Facebook if there is something telling them there's more over this way. This is a lead gen ad, which ties into parts of the business where you want to collect that piece of user information. You want someone to part with their anonymity. The conversion rates on these can be extremely high because people aren't leaving Facebook. The ad is small, it expands, and here it says, give me your first name, give me your last name, give me your email address, and you hit next. Next is just a little legal disclaimer that says, I have the right to contact you, and then you're done. So you haven't left Facebook. This is the mobile experience of this ad. So if you're just scrolling through your Facebook feed and you see something like, oh, for salebyowner.com, sell my house and pay no commission. Okay, click, name, email address, execute. I've collected that information. I can now market to you, but you never left Facebook. The downside is you might not remember volunteering your information to me. So I have paid for this information, and now when I call you, if I don't call you immediately, if I call you, say, 15 minutes later, you might just say, I was on break flipping through Facebook. I have no recollection of who you are. How'd you get my number? Why are you calling me? And this happens quite regularly for me, unfortunately. But it's a great way to collect users and build user bases at a very price compelling point. And interaction with both of these types of ads are very high because you can really tune who you're reaching. And this is kind of where I'm going to talk about why social's coming up as far as your ability to target individual users. Fundamental elements, your product and your offer, or product or offer, and the audience. You pay based on cost per click or cost per engagement. So they can charge you if you play a game inside of an ad on Facebook, they can charge for that. Publishers, we all know who there are, and there's a whole lot more than I've listed here. And there are infinite ways to build audiences. Facebook can be really valuable in both B2B and B2C marketing if you have an existing user base. Because if you have a user base, you can say, okay, I have emails and phone numbers of people who use my product. I want to engage the people who use my product and only the people who use my product to make them purchase more from me. You can take those email addresses and those phone numbers and put them into Facebook. Facebook will match them, and then only those people see your ads. You can be very granular with this too, where if you know that somebody bought black boots from you a year and a half ago, and you know the boots that they bought are now out of fashion, or if you know the boots that they bought probably don't last a year and a half, you can actually create an audience of everyone who bought black boots from you a year and a half ago and say, we need to sell these people more black boots because it's time for them to buy more. So you can be very granular with that. It's also, to your point, if you don't have much money and you're trying to get off the ground and you're selling a specialized service to a specific type of person, and this would be like a B2B sale, if you can go out and find out who these people are and what their phone numbers are, what their email addresses are, then you can say, I'm willing to spend $10, $15 if, Henry Adams clicks on my ad, because that is the person who can purchase my product. So you can even get down to the individual user if you know who that user is. Moving beyond knowing who the user is, there's also the option to do things called lookalike audiences. Meaning, here's everyone who's bought from me. Here's their email addresses, here's their phone numbers. Facebook matches 60, 70% of that because everyone's on Facebook and everyone uses the same email for this service. Or, people don't change cell phone numbers that often. They've given that number to Facebook, perhaps without realizing that Facebook is using your phone number to target media to you. So you can say, okay, here's a list of all the 20,000 people who bought from me. I want people like these people. And that can be highly valuable if you know who these people are, but you don't have a firm grasp on who your user actually is. So if you don't have super good intel that says my user is a 29 to 35-year-old single female, if you know that, you can select that and do that audience as well. You could even say she has to make between this much money, she has to live in these areas. Or you could say, these are all the people who bought from me, go find me more of them. And Facebook will take everything they know about their corpus of users and say, these people are matches for your product. Now you're paying to advertise to them. So they'll make that list for you based on input that you've given them. It's incredibly powerful, and it's a really good way to reach the right buyer and not spend too much, or the right buyer at the right price. You can also just say, hey, Facebook, spend all of my money for me, and then they'll just do exactly that. Any questions on how this kind of stuff works? Because this can be really confusing. Yes?
Kind of. If you were to choose, would you rather Facebook choose where to locate your ads, or would you do it like if it allows you to choose whether you put it on the newsfeed or articles? What would you do?
So I've typically done marketing in the newsfeed and on the right rail. As far as selecting, I'll just say I don't know. That's primarily where my ads have landed, and we've seen success with that. I haven't tested aggressively on the different places to show on Facebook.
In my experience, what I find, or where I'm finding these last months, is that if I let them choose for me and put it on Instagram and Facebook at the same time, it would rather use Instagram. Almost all of my budget will go there.
Really?
And not almost anything on Facebook. So I'm now trying to do it like separately, but I'm just trying that around.
Yeah, so Instagram has a lot of very similar targeting components to Facebook, but the user is different. So I haven't actually played too aggressively in Instagram or Twitter because I've found that for me, for selling investment grade assets, a lot of these people aren't on Instagram and a lot of them aren't on Twitter. And that's just because of who's buying from me. So if you're seeing good success in Instagram, that's fantastic. And there's probably a lot of ways that you can parlay what you've learned in Instagram directly to Facebook. But as far as where to buy Facebook inventory, tell me what works for you. Maybe I'll get smarter too. Yes?
Have you tried marketing through Facebook Messenger?
Not yet. In a similar vein, though, we have done Gmail-sponsored communication, where you can buy ad space inside of people's Gmail, which can be really creepy because...
We talked about this.
You did?
It's happening to somebody.
Actually, it's having
Was it me?
Yeah. That first
Petco, the Petco thing?
Did you buy from Petco?
Well, I buy it at the store, and I have a plan that I get money back, and they email.
So they have your email address.
Yes, yes.
And now you see Petco ads at the top of some of your.
Petco always comes at the
Yeah.
top of my emails.
Yep.
Yay, now we know why.
Well, actually, when it comes to Gmail promotions, it's probably not because Petco has your email. It's probably because you've received emails from Petco. So the way this Google thing works, and I'm paraphrasing from memory, so I could get this wrong. It might not be nearly as creepy as what I'm just going to say. But Google has the right to skim for certain words. And they can find Petco somewhere in an email, in a sender, whatever, and say, oh, Petco. We're just going to throw this out at the top. And I've done that using the domains of my competition, which can actually be pretty useful because I'm only paying for it as a click, and I'm structuring that ad as, Xome, the best place to buy distressed real estate. Buy bank-owned homes at Xome. And I know these people are already in all of my competition's email portfolios, and they're getting this push communication from my competition, so why wouldn't I try to pay to hit that person? I can service their business needs. I don't even know if PetSmart's still around, but if they are, don't have pets. But PetSmart would probably be pretty smart to start buying Petco keywords and also getting in your inbox.
Wait, so is it in your, is it like banner ads? in your-
No, it's just like
Oh,
It
just
shows
like
up at
your
the
promotion.
Yeah, it shows up at the
Oh,
top, and it
okay.
looks like an email, but it has a star.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't get.
No, you're not going to get banner ads. They're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's only on Gmail accounts, right?
I've not heard of anyone else using it,
Because how
but
else would
that's
they
not
access
doctor.
it if it's not?
Oh no, you, as a marketer, I pay Google for this ad space. So I don't know if Microsoft has set something up for Live and Hotmail accounts. There'd be nothing stopping them. No, if if it's, you at work.com or something like that. No, you really shouldn't be getting ads there. And if you are, you should talk to your system admin.
So mine is coming through Comcast. Not if.
Yeah, I don't know,
It's a
but
Comcast address, not a Google address. But it always pops up at the very top. So they may have done
well,
something.
Comcast might be doing something. I don't know, and someone could be paying for that contextual ad space. One thing that Comcast has started doing is people who have internet accounts with Comcast and TV accounts with Comcast. You might have noticed that the TV ads you're starting to see are a lot more targeted for you, and they might be related to searches that you've performed. And this is because you haven't unchecked something in your Comcast setup that says you're allowed to connect my online presence to my media consumption. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but Comcast is actually, because you're passing packets of data through them, and they can sniff out these packets of data, they can say, oh, she buys a lot of dog food. Probably show her these ads selling dog food. Or I'm just using you might be a cat person and hate dogs. Yeah. But I mean that's just an example. And I'm sure everything that collects our voices and listens to us in our house is processing this for advertising purposes as well, and I'm sure we've all consented to it. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could all move to the hills and communicate with smoke signals, or we can put up with this great life of convenience we have and the illusion of privacy. Sorry, this is my opinion. I really should get off this soapbox. Yes.
Sometimes you get a bad price on dog food. So.
No, totally. And this last year we rat holed on affiliate marketing. This year we're on paid. We haven't even hit affiliate yet.
There's always a lot of questions for Ian.
Yeah. Everyone's gonna get real sick of me. Yes.
No, I was just going to ask, as far as when you're setting up Facebook ads for, like, I was just looking at your company here.
Oh, Jesus. It's managed by an agency. It's not my fault.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes, they're very
Do
good,
you
actually.
know if they are, like, I've found like with my Facebook that it's like I do best if I try to make the tag words like my direct competitors. Because like as opposed to, so like would you be putting like Zillow and people who like Zillow already, you would.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
You know, people who follow Zillow, I want to market to them. Absolutely. You know, for my business monetization, it would be more of a Redfin, a Purple Bricks, and Owners.com. But yeah, I mean, Zillow's the 8,000-pound gorilla in the space. So I'd probably want to pay a little bit less to get in front of Zillow traffic, but it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea.
You can plug in. I actually do a lot of Facebook ads, but I've never inputted everyone's email address.
You can.
Which is genius. And so you can do all the email addresses and lookalikes to those email addresses.
And I would strongly recommend setting those up in 2 different campaigns. Because if you already have a user base, then you just want to market to that user base. And I would recommend if you're selling products that you find out what people have purchased, and then I advise getting as finite as you can. Because if you're just managing this with a small portfolio of products and a small portfolio of users, you're never going to hit the maximums that Facebook puts in front of you. If you're Amazon, you're going to hit the maximums that Facebook puts in front of you. So you got to pick and choose and prioritize what you're doing. But in your case, find out what people have bought, find out what they're likely to buy next, find out who these people are, and people can be in redundant groups too. So you can have the same person in 6 or 7 different pools, and then you could also create 6 or 7 different pools off of each of those for lookalikes. There's a lot of potential.
Create a whole campaign for people who are lookalikes to your current customers.
Yeah, and if you really want to creep your friends out, take a photo of your friends, create an ad of it, and send it to just that person. Because it's really funny. Yes, did you have a question? Yeah, sorry.
I was wondering, when you upload your custom audiences, do you find it, like, have you tested uploading for a match with first last email versus a match with first last email, home address, like address, city, state, zip, and phone number?
Good question. We have only done email address, just email address. Because matching first, last, and email address, there's a lot of ways that you can decrease your match rate. I know the email address is accurate because I send email to it and it doesn't bounce back. And I'm fairly confident that the email address belongs to that person, because why would somebody sign up someone else's email address to receive bank-owned property information? So in my case, I'm not terribly worried about it. So I would just use email address. I just use phone number because phone numbers realistically don't change that often. And then I have also used first, last, and zip combinations because, yes, you can have a lot of Mike Sullivans that live in Ballard, but aside from very common names in larger zip codes, your likelihood of having redundancy is pretty minimal. But the more things you put in, the lower your match rate is going to be, because someone might have, take the example of just using first, last, and email. A lot of people elect to use a fake name or a truncated name or a phonetically spelled name in social media to make sure that they have separation between what they do in the social media space and what they do professionally. So if you're trying to get J. Smith with this email address, and he happens to spell it J. Smith, one word, just to his friends on Facebook, you're going to miss him when the email address is high confidence anyway. Cool. Okay. Any questions on social? This is where we rat holed last time. We'll try to move fast. And my apologies for taking up a lot of your guys' class time. So thank you for the questions, though. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, so affiliate marketing. This space is either very difficult to police, and I would recommend not getting into it in 1,000 years, or high confidence, questionable value. always be evaluating what comes out of the affiliate space, because it might be someone you've already acquired who is looking for a way to purchase from you, and they just want that extra kicker of saving money. And I'm going to use Retail Me Not and other couponing sites as that example. Because if I'm feeling exceptionally thrifty, I find a product that I want, and then I'm going to go look for a coupon for it. And regardless of feeling thrifty, it's just something my wife does all the time. She always has these things open, and she's always finding an online coupon to get free shipping, save $5, save 30%, or whatever it is. So is that incremental to, in this case, Target's business or anyone else's business? No, because she would have bought it anyway, and now they're just making less money because they've engaged an affiliate customer. And that's the case of my wife, but this is a person-by-person thing. Some people will scan Retail Me Not for a specific, a vertical, and say, okay, that's a good deal on this. I wouldn't have gone to that site anyway. I'm going to get a coupon, I'm going to go. So then it is an incremental sale for that entity. The underlying message here is, if you are going to be getting into the affiliate space, be very cognizant of the fact that the revenue you're driving is at least a little bit cannibalistic, maybe a lot cannibalistic. And that's in like the couponing sites, or if you get involved with any of these other larger affiliate partners like a Commission Junction, which might in fact they might just retarget to your audience and then take a commission based on sales that would have been coming to you anyway. So I encourage people to be really careful and tread lightly here and make sure that your margins are pretty strong. The other example I put over here is from Business Insider. And this is just an article. It was, I want to say, the 10 biggest deals on the internet today or something like that. It's a listicle that they put together. And they say at the very top, very clearly, we have affiliate advertising partnerships with the following companies. If you click through here, save $430 on custom suits at Indochino, we make money, which they do. So this can be a more incremental way to grow your business through affiliate marketing. If you're able to secure, content, which is frequently evergreen on the internet, so Business Insider wants to keep this up forever because it gets them traffic when people search for it and it gets surfaced on Google. You might want to stay up forever because this is a totally new user to you, and you're getting traffic that is learning about you and saving money in the process while paying a small fraction of the sale upstream. So the fundamental elements of affiliate marketing are your item or your offer for sale. It has to be something that people want to buy, or else someone isn't going to be willing to commit the online real estate to trying to help you sell it or sell it for you. The payment is a referral fee or a percentage of sale, most commonly a percentage of sale. Publishers, there's thousands of these things. Really big ones are couponing sites. Pepper Jam is an eBay one. Or CJ, or Commission Junction, is one of the oldest ones in the space. And the audience who you're reaching is defined by the publishers. So take Wired.com, for example. Technology articles written about technology, about hardware, about gadgets. It attracts a very specific type of person. If you can get an item of yours featured in Wired.com, or if Wired.com mentions a product of yours somewhere in an article, there's probably going to be a hyperlink that they can click through and buy your product directly from your site. Or you might be the manufacturer, but Amazon actually has that partnership with Wired.com, so all consumer electronics that are mentioned on Wired go to Amazon for that affiliate rep. Make sense? Any questions? Cool. Display marketing, big online billboards. They can be animated. These were. I don't think I have to explain this too much. We all see display ads I like them because it's a good way to get in front of people who have already expressed an interest in my product. Your fundamental elements there are your creative and your audience. The creative, make it as accurate to what you're selling. Put products in it. There's a lot of companies that will do this for you. The remarketing companies that will actually follow you around with that same pair of boots you looked at, they dynamically make the creative. You just approve something that has your label or your brand mark and something about an offer you have. Nordstrom, free shipping, free returns on every item. That's the only creative you have, and this company just puts the information in based on who they're targeting on any given date. With these, you can pay in virtually any of the ways. Cost per impression, cost per click, cost per action, cost per engagement. And that's all just based on the relationship. Larger, splashier display buys, usually they're used for branding purposes. Actual hard ROI from a click in display marketing can be tricky. So if you're getting off the ground, if you're working on a finite budget, I would say do the Google Display Network and be cautious because you can refine your audience a little bit better. You can use some partners that will filter audiences for you, and I've listed two here, Distillery and Viant, where you can say, hey, I'm looking for people like this, put my ad in front of them, but the intent usually isn't as high as the intent you can collect on search or social ads. Facilitators, there's a ton of these guys who either own the inventory or broker the inventory. A lot of times when you see ads, they're not purchased directly with the actual site that you're on. That inventory was purchased in a real-time online exchange where there's people who say, now, this guy's willing to spend this much to show up for males 55 and over who like golf. And a site could say, I've got that inventory, and there's an immediate connection. So these are real-time exchanges where available inventory is sold to the highest fitting bidder. And the audience can be cut however you like, be it geography, be it whether or not somebody likes sailing. You can do these on lookalike audiences. You can purchase display inventory by email address. And you can also purchase people who've come to your site previously. Is there a question over here? Nope, okay, thought I saw a hand. And the last one that we're going to talk about is audio video, which is kind of a meeting ground of display and social, in my opinion. Again, your fundamental elements are your creative and your audience. You can buy these in just about any way, but a cost per click is going to be your most common, just because that's how YouTube typically operates, or cost per view, actually. But if you're a Pandora or a Spotify user, these audio or video experiences can be put in the middle of your viewing. You've probably realized how Facebook has recently, taken a video that's in your news feed and they'll drop an ad in the middle of it. So you get like the first 20 seconds of a video that you might have been interested in, and then you bail completely. Well, someone has paid for your eyeballs in that, and you've become frustrated if you're anything like me. We talked a little bit about Comcast, because Comcast has the ability to tap into both sides of your, of your digital consuming life, and they can tie those together. And in the case of, I'm getting a little scattered here, my apologies. In the case of a Pandora or a Hulu or a Spotify, you can do the same user-based targeting that you can do on social here as well. So if I'm looking to get in front of decision makers for my B2B purposes, and I can get their email addresses or I can get their phone numbers, then I can talk directly to them when they're consuming media at their desk, at home, wherever. It sounds creepy, it kind of is, but it's really good low funnel targeting if you know who your buyers are or who your customers are. Audience is cut up exactly like display and social. As far as taking it to the next level, we have incrementality and we have attribution. And these are two just general digital marketing things that are very good to know and very good to be aware of. Attribution is necessary. And we'll talk about a couple of those in a bit. Incrementality ties in with if you're doing some acquisition marketing and if you're doing remarketing. You know, if you're taking everyone who's purchased from you and making a list out of those people, you've already paid to acquire them. So you probably don't want to pay the same amount of money to re-engage them. They're already familiar with your brand. Hopefully they've had a positive experience. So re-engaging someone who's already parted with their identity with you or already purchased from you is not going to put as much money in your pocket on the whole if you're willing to pay the same amount. So the idea of incrementality, you look at the channels that are your highest funnel. You know, your paid search brings you new users. You have social programs that bring you new users, completely new to you. And then you have these programs that retouch them. So be cognizant of not spending the same amount of money for a user who you would have got cheaper. That was a jumbled mess. Did it make sense? Great, I see a lot of nods, because I confused myself. And then the next one, attribution. This is terribly important and not, it very rarely gets the attention it actually needs. So when it comes to attributing, if you have a longer process to get somebody to convert, and my site is one of those. I'm selling homes, and I give people no incentive to sign up unless they're actually looking to buy something. I don't gate the site. That's what it's called when you click on a site and you get hit with a modal. It says, give me your email address to move forward. Groupon used to do it all the time. And it drove us nuts because it led to a really bad user experience. People put in crap email addresses, they move forward, but you know, whatever. It doesn't give you a highly qualified user. I've played with gating the site. I've played with blocking people. I've played with obfuscating information, like when does the auction begin, what is the starting bid, and it would lead to me collecting a whole lot of leads that never actually materialized into revenue. So for my purposes, I had to really look hard at what types of attribution worked best for me, because frequently I was paying to bring someone to my site using, you know, short sale homes in Seattle, Washington. That might have been my top of the funnel keyword. And then somebody sees that, they come to my site, they look around, they don't see anything they want, but then they remember who I am. So they go to their browser and they type in Xome. And then they click on my branded ad. So now I've paid twice to engage this person. And then they might see a social remarketing ad because they're cookied as someone who's been to my site. So now I've paid 3 times to get in front of this person, or 4 times, or 5 times. And eventually, they see a property they're interested in, and they part with their information. And then I can market to them using my, more cost-effective channels, email, SMS marketing, whatever. But for me, I have to look at what was the first way I engaged somebody, which is almost always search or social. What is the last way I paid to engage somebody, which is almost always a remarketing effort. And I have to say, okay, which one is actually more valuable and which one do I want to give the money to? It's also one of my favorite interview questions is, tell me what attribution model you would use for my business, or design an attribution model for me, because it gets people thinking outside the box. There's no wrong answer. They just have to be able to substantiate what they're saying. If you're Amazon and you have 100% of the inventory, you have the best price point, you have the best shipping terms, there's no reason to not look at last click to purchase. You already have the user. You don't care about the first time they came to your site. The first time they came to your site was probably a decade ago. But you care that they typed in black boots, saw your ad, clicked on it, and bought. That's what you care about today. So you should use a last click and cut that last click at 20 minutes, because On Amazon, you know if somebody's going to buy, they're not going to put it in their cart and sit on it for 4 days. You eventually look at your cart at Amazon and say, okay, we'll just delete the whole cart. They know that if somebody comes to the site and buys in 20 minutes, that was a good execution on marketing. A first click, a company who might use a first click could be a banking company or a financial institution or any sort of longer thought process sale. A lot of B2B companies will use first click or position based because the first time that they got your attention is equally important to that last time when you parted with your anonymity. So how people engage with you and how they come in and how many times you have to touch them all feed into what is the right attribution model for you to use. And that is a business-to-business case. And that's where things get really complicated too. So if you're selling products online, no one will fault you for doing last click or last paid click. But I'm putting this in here because if you have the ability and there are tools that will let you do this, it's good to know what your performance looks like by marketing channel, by last click, by first click, all touches, just so you can always be aware of, if I kill search because it doesn't look like it's putting money back in my pocket, what is the ultimate impact on my business? You might not know. For example, you might not know that search contributes 70% of your users, but only 3% of your sales. So if you put a bullet in search, all of a sudden, you've cut yourself off at the knees and you didn't know, and you wouldn't know until it hit you in the wallet. Make sense? Cool. That's the last slide, so you guys can be totally done with me if there's no more questions. Yes.
Sorry.
It's totally fine.
If you're new to this, can you work, does Facebook work with you? I mean, you don't have to go in there totally blind, or do you have to go in there totally blind?
To get the attention of these companies, sometimes you need to be pretty big. Google and Facebook like to shuffle their reps every year. So I get a new rep every year, which sometimes is awesome if I had a bad one. Sometimes it's not too awesome because I have to reteach somebody my business. They made a really big deal about, hey, I used to have 75 clients and now I only have 15. So now I can give you better service and I don't spend an inconsequential amount of money. So with these companies, they're incentivized to get you up in spending, but there's a lot of people who are willing to spend at your levels. So there's a lot of ways that you can self-educate. This information is out there. But if I were starting with my own small business and my own small product set, and it's frankly been a while since I was a hands-on operator with this stuff. So it's entirely possible that you're doing marketing for your business, you're doing marketing for your business. There's, you guys have more recent hands-on experience than I do with this stuff. But I would caution people, find out who your users are and play in a very small pool. And play with an amount of money that you're confident you can monetize to your requirements. And at the beginning, we were talking about how it always has to be tied to the business, and it always has to be tied to concrete business goals. Are you willing to deficit spend for growth? Or is this a business that you're doing on the side and trying to grow just yourself? The amount of money you're willing to spend, the amount of money you're willing to risk is very different in those two cases. So the amount of overall risk you're willing to take on should adjust accordingly. And that's where, take small lists of people who've already bought from you or engaged with you. Or if you are your buyer and your friends are your buyer, then it doesn't hurt for you to put that contact information in and say, give me lookalike audiences for these people. It'll just start getting your feet wet. And then you can start playing with remarketing to the people who come to your site and you can build lookalike audiences off of those remarketing lists. So you can build cautiously and continuously in social. Search affords you similar options with the remarketing components. Does that make sense? Cool. Yes?
Well, and to her point, I mean, you can just go to, when you go to Facebook and if you go to create an ad for the first time, it totally walks you through. There's some more advanced stuff that like I didn't realize. I mean, you don't have to search to find those additional ways to target people, but it's kind of cool. I mean, they'll just walk you through people who live in this area, who are this age, who, like the outdoors. And you can add a ton of different things, and you can really build up who you're targeting pretty easily just by self-learning, I guess.
And that's one thing that's really beneficial about these platforms, and yeah, well, in Facebook in particular. I know a lot of companies that complain bitterly about working with Facebook at scale, because it can be a real pain in the ass, because Facebook is built still from the advertising perspective to be a much more manual experience than Google. And people have built tools to automate Google marketing, and that's been in place for more than a decade at this point. Facebook, not so much. So their UI can be friendly when it comes to someone setting up an ad for the first time. Yeah. I find it very intuitive when I have to go in there, dig around, and try to solve a problem. Google, on the other hand, that can be confusing. And there's a lot of really good online resources for getting your feet wet in Google and figuring it out. But AdWords can be an intimidating beast. Frankly, yes?
I've just been curious about this situation because we've experienced it, but as far as like your Facebook ads,
Mm-hmm.
and then Google Analytics and how that attributes traffic to various sources like paid, display,
Mm-hmm.
direct, or social, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Have you, by your any experiences or just in general knowledge, seen that Google Analytics does attribute Facebook ads to social channels, but is there any potential of Facebook ads, social traffic from Facebook ads being attributed to something other than social?
Like an other or
Like an
referral
other
channel?
or a direct, because of
direct.
Facebook
Yeah.
going to a website and then Facebook, in short, Facebook and the website not communicating directly, so
Yes.
that attribution gets
Yes.
lost and attributed to something else, like a direct.
Yes, that's why I put that really big caveat in the attribution slide that said, if implemented properly, it is infinitely trackable. I personally have been dealing with a problem for months where a lot of my Facebook traffic is attributed in Google Analytics properly, but in my downstream payback, dashboards, completely wrong. Like, it will show me that I have arbitrary numbers here, but 1,000 account creates in Facebook for a defined time period in Google, and 37 on my back end. And I can go into the tables and look at the users, and I can filter through this, and I can say, here's 1,000. Why are we off? And it's because something isn't talking. Two things aren't talking together correctly. Now, that's downstream. That's outside of Google Analytics. I'm using Google Analytics as my source of truth. It's like the dreaded not set in Google, where if you drill into a channel, you can see like, oh, 90% of my traffic's not set. Why? Well, it's because there's something that was done wrong in the tagging, or there's something that's done wrong, like in the actual tagging of Google Analytics on your site, or there's something that's wrong in your tracking parameters. So there's a certain way that Google Analytics likes to see tracking parameters. You can either set it up to auto tag, or you can force your own parameters, or you can actually use a combination of the two, which can be tremendously confusing if not done right. I think that's my problem, is I'm using a combination of the two and it's not set up. But yeah, you can see those discrepancies. And if you have a technology team that can dive into it, awesome. but there are actual companies that work as Google Analytics resellers that specialize in actually fixing your GA. And it's not just your dashboards, it's not just what you're seeing when you go into GA, it's actually all the plumbing that's associated with it. And they can also build these downstream payback systems for you. So there's a bunch out there, and you can just search for Google Analytics partners, or Google Analytics software help, or GA reseller, because that's technically what they're called, and they work hand in hand with Google.
So have you seen that the issue on the attribution of like the Facebook ad to the website and how much traffic that Facebook ad will drive? Is that an issue?
Oh, what Facebook is telling me versus what Google's telling me?
Well, like, for
Because
example,
that answer's yes. I've seen that problem.
because like they've seen, social drives 3% of traffic to the website and direct and blah, 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 that's 75% of traffic. But then, but then the agency that set up the ad is saying, well, yeah, 3%, but there's some discrepancies and some of these clicks can land in the other bucket or land in
got
like
it.
a direct attribution bucket in your Google Analytics because the Google to the website, there's some sort of communication disconnect. And so
There could
is
be a
that an issue of the analytics or the Facebook ad?
Could be both. It could be one or the other. There can always be disconnects. Between two systems, 100% of the time, there are going to be discrepancies. There's going to be drop counts. More than a decade ago, when I was in the display marketing space, a 10% discrepancy was entirely normal and expected. And we actually built it into our forecasts. So if we were contracted to serve 4 million impressions, we served 4,400,000 because we knew there was going to be a 10% discrepancy, thereby taking 400,000 opportunities to make money off of our own table because we knew that would be doing right by our customer. So discrepancies overall have become much smaller, but they're always going to happen. Now, I would be pretty concerned if you were seeing more than low single digits, and I would be asking your agency, really quantify this stuff for me, because traffic should be something that, if it's implemented properly, should line up very closely. Now, if they're talking about conversions, and they've pixeled your site with a Facebook conversion pixel, that conversion pixel has no awareness to other attribution. So it is Facebook click to conversion. They get 100% share. And if your Google Analytics is set up to do a first click, a last click, time regression, what I've used in the past as sort of a gut check is last paid click. So you can actually do a hierarchy of these are my paid channels, these are my free channels. The last paid instance is what I want all my attribution to go to. So if you're using any sort of attribution system that trumps Facebook, you will have a much larger discrepancy there. And it depends on your business. It depends on how many times people come to your site. It depends on what product you're selling. But there's always going to be that shift, especially in the conversion space. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Kinda. No, it's driving discrepancies to zero is not worth anybody's time. Driving them to, low single digits, 1, 4, 5%, you should be able to do that with competent engineers and people who understand these tools pretty easily.
Because we've seen, not to belabor the point, but our Google Analytics account says 2 to 3% traffic. The agency's Google Analytics is we're driving 20% traffic. So I don't know if it's their views that they're using or something. It's just something is not correct. So
Yeah, something's not right. I don't know what to tell you other than something's definitely not right there. And if you have a Google Analytics rep, it might not be a bad idea to engage that person. If you're paying Google for Google Analytics Premium, as in you're not getting just a sample set of your data, then you do have a rep. And if you're loud enough with Google, they might even put a solutions engineer on the phone with you. So reach out to your rep directly and get a concrete breakdown. Get by day data from your Facebook partner, mash it up to your GA, have all the numbers tidy, and say, we're seeing these problems. And I would involve the technology team at your work too, because they're ultimately going to be the people who have the ability to fix the problem. And make sure that your agency is using all of your tracking parameters correctly, because, well, I've seen that mistake more than once.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Any more questions? Okay. Thank you guys very much for your time. I'm sorry I ran over.